I don't know about you, but I've always enjoyed the Olympics. I like the competition. I like the sportsmanship. I like that, supposedly that air of the human spirit coming together. And I know in many ways the Olympics have become a little tarnished over the years. In fact, even way back, there was all times when politics entered in and you could see the divisions between people. And the same thing is happening today. But I've always believed that the Olympics are about the men and women who compete. And for the most part, they're bound together by the power and the beauty of the human spirit. And they compete not necessarily to beat each other, but they compete to do the very best that they can. And whether they're in first place or fourth place or way down toward the bottom, just being there and competing and giving it your all is what the Olympics are all about. Can't believe it was 20 years ago that the Olympics were in Salt Lake City. And I went back and watched the video of when the flag from the World Trade Center was actually brought into the airport. And a firefighter brought it in to present it to the Olympic Committee. And then, of course, when the U.S. team marched in the opening ceremony, they flew that flag. And that was a time when the nation really came together. And I guess it's ironic that usually sometimes a time of tragedy that the nation unites. But there was a special bond between us Americans 20 years ago during that Olympics. There was a moment yesterday that was pretty cool. There's a lady named Julia Marino, who is probably the best snowboarder in the United States for women. And they had the competition. And they had all three runs. And there was only one run left with one competitor, and she was at that point in first place. And if this last person didn't make her score, she would have gotten the gold medal. And so the skier from New Zealand, Zoe Sadowski-Synnott, it was her turn. And she came down, and she absolutely nailed it. Everybody knew, even Julia, that when she got done with that run, she was going to be runner-up. And as soon as they announced her as the winner, Julia, who came in second, they raced out and they hugged her and they literally shoved her on the ground and hugged her and they danced. And then afterwards she talked about how happy she was to receive the silver medal and have this lady from New Zealand win the very first gold medal that New Zealand ever won in the Winter Olympics. And it was a moment of incredible sportsmanship and grace and quiet courage. And to me that symbolizes what we need to be as Americans and as God's children. The gospel lesson for today is taken from the crucifixion of Jesus. And there are two criminals who are crucified with Jesus. And of course, the one criminal says, if you're God's son, like it says on the sign above your cross, then why don't you save yourself and us? And the other criminal says, wait a second. Jesus doesn't deserve to be here. We do. We're paying for our indiscretions. And then he looks at Jesus and he says, Jesus, please remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus says, today you will be with me in paradise. It's a beautiful moment, knowing that Jesus, the Son of God, will remember this person when he comes into his kingdom. You know, I've been thinking a lot this week about people who have gone before, about remembering and not forgetting. The other day, for about the 100th time, I talked about my buddy Adam. And Adam died 28 years ago. His picture's still on my wall. And he's just one of those people that inspires me every single day. I get chills just thinking about him, his character, his spirit. And I talked about him just for a little bit in my thought for the day. And right afterwards, his mom gets in touch with me from Texas and just says, thanks for not forgetting Adam. The thing I worried about when he died and as time went on and we moved away is that people would not know him or remember him. And I said, you know, our church is imperfect in many ways. And the imperfection of our church starts at the top with me. We're just ordinary people doing the best we can, putting a budget together, getting through another year. But if there's one thing we do right, and maybe we don't do a lot of things right, we never forget. We do not forget those who have gone before. Because if it wasn't for those who have gone before, we would not be here today. People like Adam, people like your family, and many of your friends. So I was on my way to the church, came early, went back home to see the family, came back, and there was that sunrise. Oh my God, the sunrise was just so beautiful this morning. And I came in this morning, and I just came in the sanctuary, and I got the altar ready, and I saw the loaf of bread, and I saw the cup of blessing, and I just thought of why it is that communion is so important. And I thought to myself, communion is the one time during the week or on Sunday morning when all of us come together. You know, we come from different backgrounds, politically, ethnically, the rich and poor, the white and the black, and everything else. But when we come here and stand or kneel at the altar, we are one. And we have received the gift of unconditional grace. And that's why Jesus died on the cross. He died somehow that we would know that he and God gave it all. So we would know every day that his Spirit is always, always with us. He walks every single step with us. We all come together, and here at the altar, nobody is more important than anybody else. It's all of us together. It reminded me of an event this Wednesday. I talked about it a couple times, and I have a young man named Johnny who grew up here, and then of course he grew up and he went separate ways, and he made the mistake of tuning in for the thought for the day, and he got reconnected, and so we talked, and he got married Wednesday in a very private ceremony, maybe 5 or 6 people. And he said, Don, the only thing I want in my wedding is for you to give me communion. And I said, Johnny, I'm in Orland Park. You're in Kansas City. It ain't going to happen. Then I said, yes, it is going to happen. And so on Wednesday, I came behind the altar and had the bread, had the wine. I put my phone on speaker. He put his on speaker. And I lifted up that loaf of bread. And I said, Johnny and Elizabeth, take and eat. This is my body, which is given for you. Do this for the remembrance of me. I broke the bread and tasted it. He broke the bread and tasted it miles away. And then I said, this is the cup of blessing, given for you and for all people for the forgiveness of sins. Do this in remembrance of me. And I took a drink of the wine, and he and Elizabeth took a drink of the wine. And somehow, across the miles, the spirit of the Lord's Supper came alive. And Johnny said, well, I'm sure glad the church has not forgotten me. Well, I've kind of shoved you down their throat for the last 2 years. And I said, well, and you haven't forgotten us. And that to me is what the Spirit in the church is all about. So I think of those words, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And I realize the kingdom is here. It's in you and it's in me. And that's one thing that all of us will never forget. Amen. If you're able to, please rise for the creed.